Hi, everyone. Welcome to our January meeting. Today, our speaker is going to be Dr. Shinn. She's a PepsiCo senior scientist specializing in human gastrointestinal microbiome, and she's working out of Chicago. So I'm going to turn it over to her whenever she's ready.
Cool. Can you guys see everything okay?
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. So hi everyone, it's my pleasure to speak with all of you today. And I want to leave enough time for you to ask or answer any questions that you may have, so I'll get right into it. What I have on my slides for you is a little background about who I am as a person outside of my education and career. And then from there, I'll go through my educational journey and how I got to my current career role, during which I'll touch on what a day in my life looks like and what I enjoy about my current role and what I not so much enjoy. And then I'll also touch on other jobs that you can hold in the nutrition field, and some insight into salary and benefits. And then we'll finish up with some top tips from my experience before allowing time for questions. But of course, if you have a question come up throughout, feel free to interrupt me. I have like 3 screens going on, so if I miss something in the chat or anything, just let me know because I might just not see it. So starting off by introducing myself to all of you, I married my high school sweetheart in 2017. So this is us at prom. In the top middle, and we honeymooned in Iceland. So I really enjoy traveling, which is a nice perk of the current job I'm in as well. I've gotten to go to Barcelona, Canada, and I will be going to China soon for the role that I'm currently in. And I'm sure, like all of you, I also love all things food and cooking, which is a big part of why I fell in love with the nutrition world. So on the bottom right, you can see me making lumpia or Filipino spring rolls with my mom, diving a lot more into that side of my culture and background. I'm really enjoying the food in that area as well. And then I also grew up playing tennis with my parents and my brothers. And of course, as soon as the pandemic started, I got into boxing. So managed to do that with a mask on, but thankfully don't have to do it with a mask anymore. And finally, I also have 5 pets. Actually, on a sad note, one of our cats, the second from the last, had to be put down earlier this month, actually, because of cancer. So I now have to adjust to saying I have 5 pets, 3 cats and 2 dogs. So still a crazy house. They all keep us busy, and they're like my little babies. So moving into my education, I started my bachelor's degree in 2011 at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, but I entered there as an undecided major. So I'm not sure how it is at your university, but at U of I, you didn't necessarily have to have a major determined until your sophomore year if you weren't sure. So I took a few introduction courses to things like food science and geology, and immediately fell in love with nutrition. So my sophomore year, I transferred into food science and human nutrition with a concentration in dietetics. And I finished that degree in 2015. And throughout my time in my undergrad there, the traditional clinical dietitian role was definitely promoted the most. And so I ended up pursuing my master's degree with a focus in clinical nutrition. And that was at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, which was a combined dietetic internship. Sorry, my cat is jumping on my desk. So if you see me moving around, I don't know if you can see her with the way my background is, but she's stepping over my computer. But from there, I graduated in 2017. And there I learned so much about clinical nutrition, but I also saw how passionate my peers were about certain clinical areas. And while I didn't hate the clinical world, I noticed that I didn't have that same passion about that focus that they did. And I really enjoyed the aspect of working on my master's thesis, which was focusing on infant feeding practices. So if babies were formula fed versus breastfed or a mix of both, and how that impacted their growth throughout their first year of life. And so I noticed I often found myself asking why we gave certain recommendations in the clinic. And I wanted to explore more of the research side of things. So I ended up taking an internship with the National Dairy Council, which allowed me to explore research and scientific communication. And I'll get into more detail on that experience in the following slides. But that internship ultimately led me to pursue my PhD, which I finished in 2022 back at U of I in nutritional sciences. So highlighting things from what I learned in my undergrad, I do want to stress here the importance of leveraging your coursework. I know that there's often a lot of projects and activities that you do in your courses that apply to real life scenarios, but they also give you experiences that point to real life experiences. So like here in the bottom left middle-ish, I don't think I have my pointer on, we had like a community nutrition course where we went to local high schools, as well as like middle schools, preschoolers, and talked about, in this example, we taught them about beans and how they were good for you. But also a food service course, the right top middle, to get some hands-on food service experience. And so I think a lot of times we try to seek experience outside of our courses, which is definitely important, but definitely consider leveraging the experiences you're getting within those courses as well. And during my undergrad and those outside experiences, I did some work in clinical and long-term facilities, community, food service, leadership, research, and media. So I had an opportunity to be on the local news, which like I still have the recording of that clip, and looking back, it's so cringe for me to watch, but it was a good experience and exposure to like the media side of things. I also taught cooking classes at our local gym. On the top left is me as a little baby in my Illini gear. I was the fourth generation of my family to go to the University of Illinois. Sorry, my cat is eating something on the window. So moving into my dietetic internship and master's, I just want to highlight the experience I gained through that time. So most internships I've seen usually do maybe 4 to 6 weeks of clinical experience. Ours was over 22 months of clinical experience, hence that focus on clinical nutrition. So we spent about 2 weeks in each individual rotation. So whether that was inpatient with different backgrounds, so like tube feeding, renal, diabetes, cardiovascular, as well as like the ICU. But we also did 12 weeks in 3 separate outpatient rotations as well. And then everyone's favorite food service. We did that and within the hospital, as well as like a retail option we had for doctors and other staff to eat at. So that was like a more upscale area. And the community with various aging groups, and then some process improvement management. So for example, I had to do a project where I improved how we documented malnutrition within our internal hospital system. And then our capstone at the end of the internship was what we call staff relief. So you spent 4 weeks on the floor as the acting dietitian. So they were still available and around, but like the doctors and residents knew to call you or page you if they needed anything, and you would write up your notes on your own. And the dietitians would then sign off on those at the end of the day. And outside of my internship, I also got involved with other activities. So I worked at that hospital as a diet clerk and also as a research assistant for some extra money and experience on the side, as well as outside organizational involvement. So on the top left is me with some dietitians I met through volunteering with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Women's Health Dietetic Practice Group. So that's another thing I would encourage as well. I think they were looking for a website coordinator, and of course, everyone on the board was like an experienced dietitian, and I was an undergrad, and I was like, well, I'm just going to apply because I know how to use WordPress. And so I started that role my senior year of my undergrad, actually, and I stayed in it through the first year of my PhD, so 6 years of volunteering in that group, and I met a lot of dietitians, like the ones here, that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And that was a lot of great connections and learning from them as well, not just in the leadership role, but outside of it. And then I also had the opportunity to publish my master's thesis on those infant feeding practices as well. So from there, as I mentioned, I went into my National Dairy Council internship. And at the time, my entire team that I reported to all had PhDs. Not all of them were necessarily dietitians, but some of them were. And through that 2-month experience, I created a blog post on how flavored milk could help children meet dairy recommendations, as well as some messaging using national health data on dairy foods for our chief science officer to use. And both of those were made available publicly on the website. So that was a nice deliverable I had to be able to share in my portfolio. But that experience also made it clear for me that I was really interested in pursuing a career path in scientific communication. At this point in time, I had completed my bachelor's and my master's dietetic internship, so 6 years of education and nutrition, kind of shaping me to become a clinical dietitian. And of course, being in the clinical nutrition focus, that was kind of what everyone was pushing for. So when I was looking for something to do different, it was hard to find that type of support from my mentors and people around me because they were all in that clinical realm. But this internship definitely helped me with those PhD mentors who had gone from being in a clinical space or just in the industry space to give me some other insights as well. But all of them had recommended I go back to school for my PhD. And at the time, I had really only gotten my master's because of the upcoming change with the academy. It had started being discussed like 10 years ago now that they would require a master's for you to become a dietitian. And we were told we would be grandfathered in, but I didn't want it to come down to me and someone else applying for a job and then getting it over me because they had a master's and I didn't. So that was truly the reason I pursued my master's. So I barely thought about a master's, let alone a PhD. So when everyone was like, you should really go back to school for your PhD to get more research experience, I was kind of hesitant and I started applying for clinical jobs. But eventually, with the credentials after my name, I ended up going back for my PhD. But I definitely wish that I would have done something differently between my master's and my PhD. So I finished my internship with National Dairy Council in September of 2017 and went like straight into starting a PhD in December of 2017. And I did have people recommend that I work for a little bit before going back just to kind of get a taste of what was going on and like what other options were out there. But I think because of that clinical space I was in, everyone was pushing for that clinical type of role. And I knew that that was something that I wouldn't really enjoy doing. And I was nervous that I would get comfortable and find any excuse to not go back. And everyone I did talk to was like, what you want to do requires a PhD. But I wish I would have reached out to more dietitians with master's degrees in more non-traditional roles. Because there are even dietitians with master's degrees in my company now that work on like the communications team or do different media roles and things like that. And I don't know necessarily that that's something I would have liked to do, but I never really explored it. And so I think reaching out to more of those people in different roles, because obviously people can only tell you what they know. So if someone's only been in a clinical dietitian and they love it, that's something that they're going to be able to talk about. But I also wish I would have taken a break because going straight from those 6 years of school into another 4 years of very rigorous school was a lot. And it was very tough mental health wise and just, I was very burnt out by the end of it. So I think just taking a break in between and knowing that like, you don't need to know what you're doing next at every point. It's okay to take a moment to breathe. I would have gotten here either way. So moving into some highlights of my PhD. So as I said, I started interviewing in December of 2018. So I started as a research technician in January of 2018 with the professor I actually did some undergrad research with. So I'd reached out to her in December, had asked her if she was taking any students, met with her, and she actually had an opening. So she offered to hire me in a paid position until I officially started the program that following August. And there I focused on the gut microbiome. So we used machine learning models to basically predict what people were eating based off of their microbiome. So I'm sure as you've all learned in your courses, the gold standard for figuring out what people are eating is to ask them, whether that's through a 24-hour recall or a diet record, but that comes with a lot of error just from people misreporting, either because they don't remember, small things like that, or things with portion sizes. And so we wanted to develop a way to complement those measures objectively by seeing, you know, if someone eats almonds, does the species in their microbiome change versus if they eat broccoli? And we were able to do that with 86% accuracy, looking at 5 specific foods. So it was very proof of concept, very exploratory, because we all know we obviously eat more than 5 foods, but trying to see if we can make those types of objective measures like biomarkers, like you would get blood work done at the doctor's office, for example, similar to that. But also, I think the biggest challenge in my PhD was my qualifying exam. So I actually think that was the biggest reason I considered not doing a PhD, was when I heard about this exam. It differs at different universities and programs, but for us, we have a qualifying exam, a preliminary exam, and then your defense. And so your qualifying exam is a 2-hour oral examination, and 3 professors from the department like literally sit at a table in front of you and will ask you like any and all questions about nutrition, mostly focusing on like the biochemical pathways. I think like mine was after lunch, so one of them was like, I just had a turkey sandwich and a cookie. Like I just ate all of that. Tell me what's happening in my body right now with all those nutrients. And then you have like a whiteboard and you have to write it all out. And so the first time I took it, I was just like in a complete panic. I studied so hard, but I immediately just was like tripping over myself. And then I would say something wrong and they would pick on that and I'd keep diving down that hole. So I ended up failing my first time. And that was really hard, especially because, you know, we're all overachievers in this field. And so I was like one of the first ones in my group to go, and everyone was like, oh, like if you failed, then I'm gonna fail. And I was like, no. And like, I think I was the only one that failed in that cohort. And it was, you know, kind of embarrassing at the time, but also like, it wasn't the end of the world. I think I talked to my mentor and she had said, you know, like, well, do you want your PhD, right? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, so like, you know, this information. Everyone on my panel was really nice. One of the professors offered to practice with me once a week for my next exam. And I think it was also so terrifying because at least in our program, you can only take it twice. So if you fail it a second time, you can't be in the program anymore. And I was like, okay, I have one chance left. But the second time I practiced with other people, I tried some different strategies and like, it was easier because that information was there. It was just how I would get that across. So the second time I actually had really a lot of fun taking my examination and I passed unconditionally. And at the time, I think when I first finished, you know, I'd walk into every room and be like, oh, everyone here is just thinking about how I didn't pass my exam. And everyone's just like, why is she here? Which of course isn't the case, but like that imposter syndrome, it actually ended up helping because a lot of students down the line, like after I had passed that exam, when it was their turn to take that exam, everyone would like come to me and be like, you know, what tips do you have? What did you do? What would you do differently? And even like different professors that were on my panel would be like, you should study with Leila because she was able to overcome these things. So it was like a setback at the time, but going back, like I wouldn't change how that happened because I learned a lot from that experience. And, you know, like, I think it was a good reminder for me that like everything doesn't have to be perfect and it'll work out the way that it's supposed to. So other PhD highlights, I, again, maintained involvement outside of the program as well as internally. So during my time there, I completed 2 internships with PepsiCo, which I can touch on a little bit more if there's questions there. I published 5 first author publications, 4 of them related to my research, and 1 actually related to the Academy's Leadership Institute, which is where I met Dr. McKinley. And I'll touch on that publication actually a little bit as well. I also had the opportunity, because of the research heaviness, to talk in different research talks. So that was posters, as well as oral presentations at different conferences like FINSI or the American Society for Nutrition. I also gave different guest lectures, and that was a good experience too, talking to different audiences, because it was people as young as 10-year-olds talking about digestion to other dietitians about my area of expertise. And then through those different things and involvement, got different awards, both internally and externally, through different, whether it was academic or extracurricular as well. And so through all that, that's how I got to where I am now. So I started with PepsiCo actually 3 days after I finished my PhD. So again, that reminder to take a break. It was a lot. I think I defended my PhD like on Friday. And then that Monday, yeah, I started my role, and I'm in Chicago, but my first week was actually in New York because my team was doing like a team meeting in New York that week. So I like finished my degree and then flew to New York for a week, and then still had like a first week when I came to Chicago the next week. I was back. This picture here is my entire life sciences team. There's about 100 of us globally. This was our trip to Spain, as I mentioned. So we do a global meeting every year. So we rotate between being on site, so at one of the PepsiCo locations, and off site. And so last year was off site in Barcelona. And then typically days vary just depending on what I have going on and what's being asked of me. But in general, my role is a lot of fielding questions from people on my expertise. So I got hired as a microbiome scientist. So different people in marketing or product development will come to me with questions about different probiotics they see or prebiotics, or even like different companies, like they'll see, oh, Olipop put out this claim, like where's the science behind this? What does this say? PepsiCo is the 2nd largest food and beverage company in the world. So it's a lot harder. We're a lot more rigorous in the claims we'll put on products. So a smaller company like Olipop might be willing to support a claim like improves digestive health on one of their products because they have an animal study that supports that. But at PepsiCo, with a larger company, and there's a lot of legal and regulatory considerations we take, we want at least 2 human trials showing the same outcome that are well designed before we'll even think about putting a claim like that on a product. So it's hard, though, from the science standpoint, that makes sense to us, but for marketers and the product developers, it's kind of like, well, they have it on there, so why can't we have it on ours? And so I'll have a lot of meetings with those partners, but also learning in my PhD how to design clinical trials. I'll be looped into different groups on designing clinical trials for the gut microbiome. So like I mentioned, I'm going to China 2 months from now because I helped our partners there design a study on the gut microbiome. And so I'm going out there when they start for a couple of weeks to help them kick off that trial. And then, as I mentioned, like ingredients review, if someone comes to me with a specific probiotic, I'll have to go into like PubMed, for example, search for that ingredient, pull down all the clinical trials I can find and review them, and then come back to whoever's asking about it to be able to say, the science doesn't support that at this time, but here's what we have, and things like that. We also often have journal clubs with our different experts. So there's a lot of different sciences in our group. We have 2 very smart epidemiologists, and they'll often host a journal club. We'll review different epidemiological studies so we can understand their perspective and see how that affects things in policy. And then I also work to develop research strategies for how we'll continue to move forward in the microbiome field. I also have been looped in to the low-calorie sweetener space, which I have no background in, but my PhD kind of taught me how to become an expert in something and learn quickly. And so that's a space that I'm moving into as well. And then I'll have often meetups with my manager to make sure that I'm on track with things, ask any questions I need. And as I'm sure you are all fielding now, it never changes that you always have emails to catch up on. So I really do enjoy having monthly team meetings across my group. So that's another thing I think that's hard in a big company. It is a global company. So I do have 2 teammates who are in the Chicago office with me, but then our other one is in Plano and then 2 in New York. So we do have monthly team meetings on Zoom, but we'll sometimes try to coordinate at least one altogether each year. My smaller team sits within the research and development team. So in Chicago, we'll have R&D gatherings, so it's nice to be able to socialize with other colleagues that way as well. I'll also get asked from like our chief science officer, for example, like, you know, there's all the different terms now, prebiotics, probiotics, now postbiotics. And so, for example, one of them was like, can you write me a 1-pager just on like, what is the difference between these? What claims do we have? That type of thing. And so I'll sometimes have to do senior leadership asks like that. I mentioned the clinical trial design and summarizing research, as well as research dissemination. So still presenting at conferences and things like that. And I've also had the opportunity to publish a couple papers since I've started here as well. And I'll stay up to date on different topics I'm interested in through different webinars, travel for things like I still travel to American Nutrition Society for Nutrition conferences, as well as FNC. PepsiCo always has a booth at FNC, but then also the opportunity to shadow other areas. So the unique thing about my role is a lot of different people work specifically with a brand. So I know my colleagues and our development team, who's also like one of them is a PhD RD as well. She specifically works with Quaker. I have another one who specifically works with like Rockstar Energy. My job is not specifically supporting a brand, and so I don't get a glimpse into how that works. And so I'll often look for different opportunities where I can talk to other people in those roles to see what they're doing and gain some insight that way. And then as always, developing, we always have to develop our objectives, have evaluations to make sure that we have a career development plan in mind and see where we want to go from here and make sure that what we're working on aligns with those goals to get us there. And so I do really enjoy the people I work with. I don't think I realized how important that would be for me, but especially coming from grad school where it's like you're kind of siloed in your own little area and everyone's just working hard to get their things done. And so I feel like a lot of times you're not even socializing, you're just like getting straight to labs, getting your things done. And then coming into this role, it sounds so small, but like people would ask me like, how was your weekend? And I would kind of freeze up and be like, why are you asking me? Why are you asking me how my weekend was? Like, it was good. And they'd be like, what did you do? And I'd be like, is this a trap? Are you trying to see if I was working? Like, what? And then I realized they were genuinely just like, what did you do this weekend? How are you doing? And so I think it's really great to be in a company where there's so many smart people, but they also are just like genuinely nice people that want to make sure you're doing okay. There's a lot of collaboration cross-functionally, like I mentioned, with like our epidemiologists, product developers, marketing. And I am finally doing what I really wanted to do, which was breaking down complicated topics into understandable pieces, whether that be for other dietitians or the public. And that allows me to stay up to date on the latest research because it's needed for my role. And especially coming from grad school where there really was no work-life balance. Everyone here is really great at like, you work 9 to 5, your weekends are your weekends. It's up to you. I mean, some people do reply to emails after 5 p.m., but you're not gonna like get yelled at if you don't reply to an email after 5 p.m. because people know you're not working. While there's obviously benefits to some of these things that I don't like us being the second largest food and beverage company, it's hard because communication can be hard when there's so many people globally. It's hard for us to sometimes keep track of what we're working on. So for example, there might be someone like in New York right now working on gut microbiome stuff that I don't know that they're working on. And if we were communicating that, we could be collaborating, but there's just so many moving pieces that sometimes I think that gets lost in the communication. And because I mentioned, like, I don't work directly with brands, for me, it's sometimes hard to see an impact on my work on the business. So if someone comes to me with a probiotic ask, so far I have always had to say no with the science where it's at. So I haven't been able to be like, yes, we can put this probiotic claim on a product. And so I think a lot of the work that I do is long-term, like down the line, there should be science to support certain things that we can put on products. But I'll see like different colleagues, you know, support Quaker getting a certain claim or things like that. And I'm like, that'd be so cool to see like Quaker with a claim that I helped support. But I think it's hard to think sometimes in the day-to-day that like what I'm working on is very long-term work and not seeing that short-term impact. And then as I mentioned, the people I work with aren't all physically here. So I actually only go into the office 1 day a week. It's about a 2-hour commute for me with traffic and everything in Chicago. So that's nice. I try to at least go once a week so I can have that social interaction with people. But then, you know, it's not as nice to have those meetings when you're on Zoom constantly and you're not physically seeing the people that you're working with day to day. So I do want to touch quickly on other options that you can do outside of the traditional clinical dietitian role. So I think I know at least one person in all of these roles, and I'm sure Dr. McKinley does as well. So if you're interested in learning more about these, I don't have experience in them, but I can always connect you with someone who does. So, you know, we have sports dietitians, R&D, which is where I am, retail, professors, policy, private practice, communications, medical sales, food service, and school nutrition. But there's also other food science career options. I think, so some of those overlap, like the professor, sales, regulatory affairs, but there's also different science roles, quality control and food safety as well, that our food science background would allow us to move into, as well if that's something you're interested in. So I talked about this a little bit at another undergrad talk I gave, and I'm sure Dr. McKinley will back me up here because this work, as you can see, her and I worked on together at the Academy's Leadership Institute. And so I think, at least for me, and I hope it's changing for all of you now, but when I was in school, it was always like, don't ever ask anyone about salary, don't talk about salary, like it's a taboo topic. But I think it's important for us to talk about salary in an appropriate way, because if we're not transparent with what we're making, we're not going to know what we're supposed to be making. And so doing some like brief research, I think this was about 6 months ago, so it should be pretty accurate still. I talked to like 12 of my friends who became clinical dietitians with their masters between 2016 and 2018. And all of them said they made somewhere between $40,000 to $55,000 when they started. And then the starting salary for the equivalent of my position with a master's degree is $100,000 at my company. When I started at Pepsi, my base salary was $95,000, but they also offered me $10,000 for signing on and $5,000 for relocating. So it was $110,000 starting. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little salty that I was only making basically $10,000 more than someone with a master's degree, because I was like, I went back to school for 4 years to make $10,000 more. But I think the other benefit of that is just like the type of work I can do. As I mentioned, I do more of that like nitty gritty research work, which is experience that I gained through my PhD. And so with my master's degree, I wouldn't be able to be doing this in depth of research work, which is what I wanted to do. But again, I think that highlights the importance of exploring the options that you can do with your master's degree or your RD credential, and not just focusing on like one thing. And so the other thing that was really nice that I did not expect was they gave me a raise within my first year to retain me. So they had said that, you know, there's other companies that will kind of try to like poach you after your first year, because they know that if they pay you more, you'll go to them. So I was given a raise within my first year. So my current salary is now $120,000, which includes an annual bonus that I get. And that was just kind of like, you know, you've done good work. We appreciate what you do, and like we understand your worth. So like we're willing to up your salary so that you don't just leave us for another group that will pay you more. And so This compensation and benefits survey is kind of like the biggest thing we have for dietitians, on what dietitians traditionally make. I think it's updated every 2 years. It might be less than that. But Dr. McKinley and I in our group also worked on a paper in our Leadership Institute work on negotiating salary, and kind of where people's confidence are with that. And so I think, that's a really important step to moving into the importance of talking about salary and negotiating salary, and just making it not a taboo topic. I mean, obviously there's proper ways to bring it up. I don't think you should just walk up to someone and be like, hey, how much do you make? I think you need to gauge it and go from there. And I'm sure Dr. McKinley has plenty of better strategies than I could even come up with. And I'm sure she's talked about those, or would be happy to with all of you. And so for me, what I've learned through this time for my key success is what's best for you. So just because everyone else is doing clinical dietetics, if that's not something you're interested in, that's okay. You don't have to do it. If it is, that's awesome too. I think it was really hard for me to go a different path or a different route because I saw everyone else doing something else and I was like, oh, that has to be the best thing. But I think you really need to reflect on what you're interested in, what's best for you to do. I'm still working on learning to say no. So I think it is hard sometimes to not want to take every opportunity that comes your way. But as I mentioned, taking breaks, not burning yourself out, really working on making sure that you're taking opportunities that are aligned with your goals and worth your time and effort. And then kind of in realm with the first one, following your own timeline. Again, you don't need to rush through things. It took me 10 years of education to get to a career that I was actually interested in and wanted to be in. And that's okay. There's plenty of people in my graduate school program that were older than me. And so there's no timeline for when you need to be at a certain point in your career. Most people want to help you. So like I said, I'm always open to if people reach out to me on LinkedIn and introduce themselves, ask if they can have a 30-minute chat with me about, my career path or things like that, like being here talking to you today. So I don't think you should ever let that stop you from reaching out to someone. I mean, worst case scenario, you reach out, someone just says, I don't have the time, or they don't respond to you, which sucks, but it's not the end of the world. I think it's better often more to reach out just to ask people about their experiences. And then finally, you'll never be 100% qualified for a role you're looking at. And I don't think you should let that stop you from applying. Make sure you sell yourself. You have plenty of experience and knowledge that you can leverage, and there's plenty of things you can learn on the job as well. So if you come across a job and you're like, oh, I only meet 70% of these requirements, I don't think I qualify, just apply, because there's probably other people applying as well who have even less qualifications as you. And all of you in this program are smart to be in a science field like this. So you can learn on the job, and that shouldn't stop you from applying for something like that. Sorry, I know I went over time, but I am happy to answer any questions, whether you guys want to stay here. You can feel free to message me at this email. And then I can also share these slides with Dr. McKinley, because I have some resources that I've found helpful for job searching as well as graduate school. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question. So how did you get the Pepsi internship? And then after you did the internship, they offered you the job once you had your PhD?
Yeah, so my first internship was during my third year of my PhD. They actually had a co-op program specifically with the university, because there were a lot of alumni in the team that I work on. And so they would take one student from my PhD program every year or every semester and do a 10-hour internship. And once I did that, which they discontinued a couple of semesters after I was done, they were like, you should apply for the summer internship. So they do offer summer internships every year. They take over 1,000 interns, because it's not just nutrition, it's sales, accounting, HR, like across the entire nation. And that ranges from undergrad to graduate school as well. So I then applied for that internship. And so if that is something you're interested in, they only take, in the nutrition realm, they take you if you're in your final year of your bachelor's degree or in your final year of graduate school, because they want to be able to offer you a job at the end of it if you're interested. And so I started mine the last year of my PhD. If you just go to like PepsiCo careers and search internship on the website, you can apply there. And they just basically, when I started, had me fill out a survey that said, are you interested in a full-time job at the end of this if offered? And I said yes, and I was lucky enough to get an offer at the end of it. And it was to start a year later. So that's why they want you in your last year, because they can't give you an offer to start like 2 years from now. I think the longest they can do is a year from your end date of the internship.
Thank you.
Stop sharing so I can actually see you guys.
Does anyone else have any questions? Guess not. Okay, well, thank you for speaking with us today. We appreciate it.
Of course.
Yes, thank you. You should be getting a gift in the mail. Dr. McKinley might have reached out to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And of course, if anything comes up or you were too shy to ask here today, feel free to email me. Like I said, I'll send that slide to Dr. McKinley, so you'll have my contact information. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever I can do to help. I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, Dr. McKinley, am I gonna share the PowerPoint or will you?
If you want to, you can, if you have it
Okay.
ready to go. I'm literally on Amazon buying her gift.
Okay, can y'all see my screen right now? Or I guess I need to press present. That would probably be ideal.
We can see it.
Okay. So I can tap through this. Okay, spring membership dues are $10. So if you still haven't joined SNDA, you can either use this link right here, the QR code, or Allison's going to put the link in the email. Volunteer opportunities. So there's conversations to remember. That's when you volunteer to visit with an older person and just give them some social interaction. And then there's always Habitat for Humanity. And then they have build opportunities Wednesdays and Saturdays. And then the food bank, as always, and LSU's food pantry. And then don't forget to take pictures and submit your points to the link right here. Ag Magic is coming up, so that's going to be March 18th through the 22nd. And they have the nutrition booth shifts. It's 2-hour intervals. So please sign up for that. It's a really good opportunity to get some volunteer hours and help out. And it's with a bunch of little kids from school, so it's nothing too difficult. Okay, on-campus nutrition jobs. So build a healthy meal project. This is the job that Hannah currently has. So I'm going to turn this over to her to talk about it a little bit.
Okay, so basically, since I'm graduating, we're just looking for someone to take over after me. You'd probably be starting in like May. What we do is she gets a grant from Louisiana Healthcare Connections to make healthy cooking videos. There are like heart healthy, diabetes friendly, pantry meals, farmers market meals, all kinds of stuff. The main like duties of your job, you would help her to find recipes, like type up the recipes, run the nutrition analysis. You help write scripts, and then you also have video shoot days. where we do it in the demo kitchen in AFSL, kind of help set up, prep the ingredients and such. We get like various nutrition agents with the Ag Center from all across the state to be like the talent in the videos. And then afterwards, you help the guy from communications edit the videos. We get them on YouTube. It's a really great experience, and it'll look really good if you go to like med school or an internship or grad school or anything like that, just because it's kind of harder to find a nutrition related job in undergrad, but you'll work for the Ag Center, so you don't have to work on the weekends. It's like 8:30 to 4:30. You can make your own schedule. You just kind of like work with her and tell her when you can be there. Since it's a student worker job, they know that like class comes first, so that's a great positive to it. The only thing is you have to be able to work over the summer.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. And then the next one is Allison's job right now. She's the dietitian's assistant in the Student Health Center. So Allison, did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, this job position has really prepared me a lot for just kind of the future in general. Basically what you're going to be doing is you'll see actual students, they make appointments with the dietitian. Basically, they come to see you first. You kind of like just ask them a bunch of questions that are kind of scripted up. You chart their appointment, you show them how to complete like a daily food record. We have obviously like templates for that you give them. Chart their appointment, you schedule them with the dietitian, and then they see Emily, who's the dietitian, a week later. I've really learned a lot from this job. It kind of connects a lot what we've been learning in kind of our 4,000 level classes, some 3,000 level classes. Kind of like that connection is just there, and I've seen like real life nutrition problems with students. Obviously everything's confidential. I've sat in on some of the appointments with Emily, which has been also a good learning opportunity, just kind of how she approaches giving them recommendations and things like that. It is also a student job, so your schedule is really flexible. I kind of just work when I can. You are expected to work during the summer, but Emily's works with you on that. If you really can't work at all during the summer, she'll try and hire someone else just for the summer or something like that. And you're expected to work usually during most breaks, but it's pretty flexible if you need off for a vacation or something, obviously within an appropriate amount of time. She usually gives you that time off. She's amazing. I recommend all of you apply. You have to be a dietetics student. We've had a few people apply already. But yeah, if you have any other questions, my email's right there. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison. Okay, Tiger to Tiger mentoring. Don't forget to track your meetings. If you have any questions, please contact Hannah. And then also please send in pictures with your mentor or mentee. We don't have many pictures of like recent, so it'd be nice to get some new pictures in. And then we could also post them on our social media pages just to advertise that program. And then here's some suggested topics. So in January, you could talk about dietetic internships, med school, grad school applications. Sorry. And then in February, you could talk about future classes, registering. It was really helpful for me, for my mentor, whenever I was a sophomore. She kind of helped me pick which classes to take together and which order. And then in March, every pair must do a project related to National Nutrition Month. And then please also take a picture for that so we can post it on the SNDA Instagram. Okay. And then a give back night is pending with Andy's. I've been working on this with them for a while. Every time I talk to them, they get a new manager or the manager isn't there. So hopefully we will probably be having our give back night on February 29th. It's not set in stone yet, but it's a Thursday night. So please join us for that. And then for National Nutrition Month, we also have Beyond the Table. So we need your ideas. for things we can do in the month of March to fit the weekly theme. So if you have any recommendations for stay nourished on a budget, recipes, anything would be accepted. Week 2, C and RD, that's going to be spring break week. If you have any social media ideas. Week 3 is eat a variety of foods from all food groups. And week 4 is eat with the environment in mind. So that's sustainable eating. So you could talk about like canned sardines, recipes from that. I'm sure Miss Myhan has plenty of suggestions for this. And we also don't have a National Nutrition Month chair, so if anyone wants to help with this, it would be greatly appreciated by Dr. McKinley, so please email her about that. And then land is coming up. It's on March 1st and the 8th. Those are both Fridays. It is free for student members of the Academy. And then there's 9 speakers, so please register to attend that. And then we are doing a scholarship for DICUS and grad school applications. So it can award you up to $125 to assist with your application fees. Sorry. Hold, I don't know. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm in a study room and I don't know what.
I didn't actually know y'all.
Yes, I'm in
Yeah,
a
for
Zoom
student
right
effort.
now.
Okay, we're just gonna ask my friend.
I'm so sorry.
You need to study, Lydia. Damn.
No, I'm in an important Zoom right now, so. Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, you guys. And here's the eligibility for that right now. So you must be an LSU student and you have to be a member of SNDA, obviously, to qualify for this scholarship. And then you need to have a GPA of 2.8 or higher, and you must have financial need for this scholarship. Sweatshirts. So we're still doing the SNDA merch. We do have limited quantities available, as you can see right here. So if you'd like to purchase, just email Dr. McKinley and let her know your size and how many you need. Member of the month. The member of the month is Ava. Is she here? No. Okay. Ava is the member of the month. She'll see that on Instagram, and I'm sure she's got an email, or she will get an email about that. And then our January member of the month is Chantel. I don't think she's here either.
I think they're both at work.
I think so. Okay, well, she'll see that too. And then here's our spring meeting schedule. So the next meeting will be in February on the 26th in the Human Ecology lobby. And then March will also be in the Human Ecology lobby. And then for April, our last meeting will be back in Knapp Hall. And then that's it. So any questions, comments, concerns? No. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming to our online virtual meeting this January.